Okay. All right. First question, I'm going to just throw out some questions as prompts and we'll see where this goes. When did you first become aware of COVID-19?
I became aware in like December of last year. We were in history class, and my teacher, Mr. Butler, was just talking about it as if it was just another current event, as it was happening in China. And I remember students going around talking about how it could never affect us and how that was their problem and not ours. And then a couple months later, it did become our problem.
I think one of the first times that I became aware of it was when the school shut down, because I'm not very active, or I wasn't very active in news and keeping up with it. And so when it shut down, it was like, oh, what's this? Like, what are they talking about? Why is this happening? And then as I started to learn more, it became more and more frightening, I would say, as I realized how it could affect my family, because my sister here is immunocompromised and has a higher risk of having severe side effects. Number two? No? Okay.
Okay. So maybe we could go through kind of a timeline. What changed and how did it change and when did it change? What are some, again, respond however you'd like.
Well, I remember first hearing about it in the beginning of the year, and then since it didn't really get here until the middle of the summer, I didn't really see any of the effects of it for a long time. And the only, like, the time that I started to see it was when I started working at the hospital, and I started to see, well, I didn't see a lot of people come in, but I saw a lot of the way that it affected, like, the people in the retirement home. And then once it got into the retirement home, it was it came through very quickly, and so that's when it kind of became very real to me, because I didn't see like effects of it until it affected me personally, which is I think how a lot of people like saw the situation. And so I saw it in a very like sped up and drastic timeline from where I work.
I think what this question addresses too is what's changed for you?
I can say that I've definitely become very desensitized to it. I through junior year, like I've always had friends that were in older grades than me, so I've kind of always looked forward to the things that they've been doing. But kind of as time went on, I got very desensitized to missing things and like missing out on things. So at this point, I'm kind of like, well, if we get a graduation, we get a graduation. But if not, like it's not that serious because I'm not really expecting it at this point. And like for me, I was drum major this year in marching band, and that was something that I've looked forward to since freshman year. I was really excited. And, when the time came, I'm like, well, at least I get to do one show. Like we got to perform our thing one time. So it was kind of like, at least I get to do this.
I agree with Rory. Going into senior year, I was really excited for all the things and opportunities I'd get, but then I quickly learned that I probably wouldn't get them. And I didn't, as time went on, I didn't really care that much. I just cared that my family was safe and that I was safe and that my friends were still alive and I was still able to go to school and all that. So I don't think now it's much as missing anything. It's more that worrying later on other people will be missing seeing me grow up.
Yeah, adding on to that, it was more of a thing of when I finally got to go back to school, because I got to go back second semester this current semester. It was more of a conversation like, is it okay for me to go back? Like, is me going back and getting my grades back to what there used to be, because we're on Ingenuity, and Ingenuity is really just not a good platform, in my opinion. Going back, or does that outweigh the risks of every everyone else in my family being at risk. And so everything becomes, you become used to missing out on stuff, I think. And that's what's really saddening. Because like you expect it now. It's not, oh, should I try out for this and do this and all that? It's what will this do and how will it affect me?
How have you seen other people? You all seem so very well adjusted right now, but have you are some of your classmates not so well adjusted?
Um, I know a lot of seniors who are very like angry at COVID and choose to ignore it, which is not very smart. I mean, we have some people who are just like in denial about it still, and I think they have a right to be. Our senior year, like this year that's supposed to be so big, and like our last high school experiences and stuff has been taken away from us. But I know that a lot of people refuse to think that COVID is a thing outside of school. Like the second, like I wear my mask when I get until I get into my car when I'm going through the student parking lot. But then you also see a lot of people, not even just seniors, that rip their mask off the second they get through the doorway to go, and choose not to believe that it affects them unless they're in school, just because they're in denial of it still.
I'd also like to say I'm not sure if it's because like as younger people we are more able to adapt to certain things, but I'm not in a lot of like athletics, but I'm friends with a lot of people that are, and I know that they're willing to like change the way that they do things. And honestly, I think a lot of the pressure to um unrestrict the precautions that we're taking, or people who want more seating in basketball games and everything like that, are the parents. I think that the parents are who are feeling more affected, as I feel like they're seeing that their high schoolers are not having the same type of high school experience that they're having, and they're pushing back on that. But I feel like for the majority, a lot of us are okay with the changes for the most part.
Yeah, I think that there are two like kind of really distinct groups where there are the people that are like in denial and just will push back on it and are really set on doing things the way that they've always been. And then there are the people who are just kind of like, I'm going to stick it out and get through this because, we have to adapt because this is like a different world than we've had to deal with for a long time. And a lot of the people that are so resistant to the change are the like not necessarily some of the teachers, but some of the people who have always led a very specific way and they would like to keep leading that way. And then of course like parents and just a lot of students want to just be able to have, like Rory and Christina said, have their senior year the way that they've wanted it to be, because if any year in high school is important, it's your senior year. But I think a lot of people have been very good at adapting and realizing that not everything can be the way that it has been, but then there are always going to be some people that resist to it.
What you're saying is exactly why I gathered this group, because we hear from parents about, oh, my children are missing out on the best year of their life, which is sad to think that top out at age 18. But I think a lot. My impression is it's the parents that miss your senior year. Have you been able to convince your parents that it's going to be okay?
Well, I talked to my mom a lot about it, and I'm more into fine arts type of things, and I talked to her a lot about it. And in my experience, the fine arts parents, there's a lot less of them. They are kind of more understanding. Like my mom's pretty understanding. Like we're not doing like a musical this year, and I'm very involved with like set crew for that. And I've been like, well, I'm okay. Like I have a lot of stuff going on anyways. Like it's okay that we're not doing it. And my mom's not pushing back on that. So I think that I am being listened to, and I think a lot of others are as well. It's just, some parents that kind of get like that.
Mhm.
I know for my parents, my grandpa has cancer, so we're all really like cautious about what we do. But my mom has kind of sat me down and said that, I mean, it's my senior year and I get what I want to do is what I'll do, but I have to deal with the consequences. So that means if we did end up having like a winter formal or something and I went to the dance, I would have to quarantine and I want to be able to see my grandpa for 2 more weeks. And so it was just kind of knowing like my limits and stuff that would affect me and just kind of dividing it that way. But for my younger sister, my younger sister, she's my stepsister, so my parents were like, okay, you need to stay with your mom if you're going to go out and be with friends, or we need to have some boundaries on that. So it was just my parents were kind of cool about it, but it was just a matter of it's your life, your decisions, and your consequences.
Mhm.
Yeah, my parents were pretty understanding. They're teachers, so they have their own kind of stuff to deal with in their classrooms. And like some members of my family that I live with are older, and so we've had to be careful in case for their health. And I had to have a discussion with my parents because they really wanted me to do online school. And I said that I did not want to do that because I didn't want to put my grades at risk, which was very selfish. But I mean, I've been very lucky. I haven't, gotten it or anything. In my work, I get tested twice a week, which is also a reason that I've been able to do like fine art stuff and go to school because I've had access to testing so much. But my parents have been very understanding. But like Christina said, if I want to go out and hang out with some friends or something like that, they want me to quarantine, just in case something happens because they don't want to run the risk of me spreading it throughout our house if I ever do get sick.
What are some things that you have discovered about yourself that you probably wouldn't have realized during this time?
I think I've realized how independent I am throughout quarantine. Like, I used to think that I needed to be around a lot of people to be happy and that I needed to socialize all the time. But now, because I was by myself for that long period of time, I'm more comfortable being by myself. And I've also realized, you don't always need to be in like a big crowd of people to be happy or comfortable. And yeah, so that's one of the things. And then also like mental health, I've realized how to like my needs and what I need to succeed by myself versus like being at school all the time before quarantine. It was like do this, do that, don't slow down. But then when we had quarantine, I was able to slow down and figure out what I needed to do.
I think I learned that I really need to be in a certain environment for my learning purposes. Like, I've always been a really good student and I've never had that much trouble with school. And I guess I've always not taken it for granted really, but just kind of didn't know that that was the case because we've only had 4 like virtual days where we had to Zoom in with our teachers and everything. And I've had absolutely no motivation during those days. Like it's insane the switch that it is. So I'm really glad that we have the opportunity to go back to go to school 100% and that we're safe and that we have a mask mandate. Because otherwise, I seriously think that my grades would just be horrible if I didn't have the opportunity to be in a school setting.
Mhm. Yeah, Grace, you found that to be true for you, didn't you? Do you want to speak to that a little bit? Grace and Laurel, go to North Scott, by the way, for those of you who just got here.
Yeah, sorry, mom wanted something. So yeah, I found because I've always known that I need structure, but this really highlighted it because it was more of the point where like I just would think that I was like up to date, and then I realized I wasn't, and I got farther and farther behind, and I got in a farther and farther hole, and then it was just me trying to dig myself out of that hole for a good month or so.
Yeah, I think that in this, I really had to figure out how to be more self-motivated than motivated by others. Like that was one of the worst things about the initial quarantine for me was not necessarily that I was missing a lot of people, which I was, but I just had no motivation to do anything. Like I would just stay in my room all day because I didn't think that there was anything that I needed to do, and which is part of the reason that I'm very lucky to be able to go to school in person because I know that now, since I've been able to find a lot of more motivation in myself, but if we were online, I don't know how well I would be able to actually stay motivated and figure out what I need to do when. And so that's definitely something that I've had to learn over the last few months.
I think also online, we don't have like the only way that teachers can contact you is through email, and a lot of students don't check their email. But at school, when you go in person, you have teachers constantly telling you, hey, did you get, like, do you know that we have an assignment? Did you work on that? Do you need help? But when you're home and you don't have that support, you just kind of let yourself fall through because you don't have anyone reminding you. I mean, you can set reminders on your phone and stuff, but it won't be the same as having that like one-on-one with a teacher who that you know will be there to support you even if you are like confused or lost on an assignment. And when at the beginning of quarantine, we did like optional school and it would help you get your grade up, but you didn't have to attend. Um, I know that I went the first few times, but I was scared to ask my teacher for help on email or do the chat on Zoom because I didn't want to look like I didn't know what I was doing. So I ended up just showing up to those optional classes because I didn't know how to learn on my own.
Mhm.
To add on to that, it also got hard to know how to ask for help. Like, I know a specific example is I was learning trigonometry at the end of last year, and I was already having trouble with that in school. And we had the option of like Quest, so kind of like a study hall where we could go in and ask for help if we were having trouble. And my teacher, Mr. Olson, has always been really good about knowing how to answer questions. But the fact that I didn't have access to seeing him in person, not really knowing how to word my question on a math problem into an email was a little hard. So that was definitely something that I struggled with. And I had the same thing that happened to Christina. I just stopped going. I stopped learning, and now I'm in calculus. And we get to the trigonometry sections, and my class has no idea what we're doing. Like we have to go back and completely relearn it because we never got there.
That brings up an interesting question. I see a lot of parent comments about our students are falling behind. Our students are falling behind. Do you ever feel like you're falling behind? Or does it matter that much? Do you feel
I
like
mean,
you will catch up?
I think that it is very easy to fall behind, especially if you're doing an online if you're doing your learning online, because especially last semester, they didn't have any Zooms or anything. It was just pretty much completely, they would send you your assignments at the beginning of the week, and it was your responsibility to get them done by the end, which if you just get a bunch of emails in one day from your teachers saying this is what you need to do and it's this whole stack of things, it's really hard to push yourself to do it because what you don't realize is when you're in class you just do these assignments while you're in the class and it just seems natural, but when in your house and you have all these things to do, it just becomes a lot more overwhelming. And I think the online students probably had to struggle with that a lot more than us in-person students did. But I remember there was one week where I was exposed to someone that was sick, and so I had to do online learning for about a week. And I had so many assignments that week, and the idea of just pushing them off or not doing them was really tempting. But I think part of what actually made me do it was the fact that I knew I had to go back the next week or so. But for the online people, I'm sure that it's very easy to just not do it or get behind because there's no motivation and there's no one telling you really you need to do this because it's just you on your own.
I also think that I personally have never been online. But I know for the people that have been, those assignments that just come in weekly, it just feels like busy work. Like, I know if it were me, I wouldn't feel like I was getting anything out of it if I wasn't in a classroom. And I know that a lot of people just took the Mondays and they would get all their work done on Monday and then they would have the rest of the week off. So I mean, if that were me, I don't really think I would feel like I was getting anything out of it. I would think it would just feel like just work that I had to be done.
I was quarantined for 2 weeks, like last semester, and I definitely put off my work until it was almost time for me to go back because it was just the matter of we didn't have Zoom. So at that time and point we weren't like it was almost like the online students were kind of cast aside and it was just do what you figured out you're on your own. And so I've always been like ask a bunch of questions, talk to teachers, hands on with teachers. That's always been how I learn. And when I didn't have that and everything was through email, I just kind of let myself fall behind. Like it wasn't anybody else's fault but mine, just because there wasn't that connection. And then when I came back, I started to struggle even more. Even though I was in school, it was just because everybody was so much more ahead of me. And even there was no way for me to catch up, even when I did ask for help because I had fallen behind.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
well, Mom, been listening to what you've been saying, and it's pretty interesting. My name's Sailor. I'm the son of Stacy Mercado. I'm an online student, as you were just talking about. So yeah, what was the last question?
Oh, did you feel like you're falling behind?
I definitely struggle with that a bit, but it's definitely not like a hindrance. It's not that bad.
I think one of the problems with the online thing is when you get all your assignments, it's hard to tell if you're just doing the assignments or if you're actually learning anything. Because I remember when I was just online for a week, but I came back and the only class that I really struggled with coming back was chemistry, but I just felt like I had missed like a whole unit. And so I came back and for a couple days I just didn't know where we were because I had done all the assignments, but the information doesn't stick in your head as well as it does if you're in a classroom and you can ask a question just to completely know if you understand it and can apply it or not. Because if you only have one or two worksheets, you can't really tell if you actually understand it or if it's just something that you're doing.
The way that online was set up at North Scott was it was on Ingenuity, and Ingenuity had no continuity with what the actual curriculum was. Like the teachers would pick subjects about what they were going to be teaching in the semester, and they would sort of like try and figure out how much time they would have in class and how much time you would have in Ingenuity, and sort of like figure out how long you would actually be if you were actually sitting in class to do your work. But it had no continuity, so it felt like you went to a completely different school and then came back. So like I'm in school now and I'm just relearning stuff I already learned in history, but I'm learning a completely different subject in science, and it's like, wait, I don't know anything about this. What do you mean you've been going over this past semester? I wasn't here. I don't get this. And then so we have P6, or like a sort of like a way to go to your teachers for a whole period. And so I've just been either in that or just sitting behind after class, after the bell, just asking teachers bunches of questions, because some of it just doesn't make sense, and others it's like just learn as you go and hope it works out.
I can also say that in the in-person sense of falling behind, for example, so in my calculus class, at the beginning of the year, first semester, we were all turning in our assignments online. Like we would get a picture of the problems we were supposed to do, and then we'd do it, take a picture of it, and turn it in on Canvas, and then we wouldn't get any feedback. So none of us were really learning anything, like knowing if we were going to get it right. So at the beginning of December, our teacher was like, okay, you guys have not learned anything this whole year. We are going to back it up. So we are so behind at this point because that whole like first half of the semester last year, when we weren't getting feedback on our assignments, we didn't know if we were doing things right or we were doing it wrong. It was almost completely pointless. So we had to go back and do that all over again. And now we're just at the point that we stopped that now.
Mhm. So those of you who are seniors who are planning on going to school next fall at its college or university, what kinds of concerns do you have at this point?
I'm really scared because I don't want to spend all this money and then just be online and not absorb any information or put myself at risk by being on campus. I just know that I care a lot about like my family and my friends, and I wouldn't want to go stay on campus and then go home for break and give everybody a disease that I didn't even know I had.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm worried about as well. Hopefully with vaccines and everything, it kind of gets back to normal. I'm going to Iowa in the fall, and personally, I've made the decision that I'm going to live on campus, whether we're in person or online, just because I don't feel like I could do college at my house. And I think that I've seen a lot of people on social media who are in college, and some of my friends who are in college, um, who are like, I have a friend who takes classes at Iowa, but all her classes are online. So she still lives at her house. And I know that she really struggles with that. And I know that I would struggle with that. And I feel like being in a new environment, being in a college environment would help me learn. So that's just something that I've personally chosen to do. But also, I'm hoping for some smaller class sizes that will allow us to be in person for some things. But also, I know that college is really new with like note taking. Like, I don't really know like what the learning experience is going to be like. So I'm a little worried about adapting to that if I do have online classes. But yeah.
I also think that there's a difference between a teacher telling you things and talking with you about a course or a lesson and reading it online. So if college is online my first semester, I know that I won't do the best that I can because I'll just be reading it or trying to listen online to a glitchy lecture versus being in class and actually getting hands-on experience with the teacher and with the lesson and with the course. I just know that if I was online for college, I wouldn't give it my best and I wouldn't be able to give it my best.
Also, I'm taking a college class right now. It's dual credit, so I take it with the teacher at the high school. But the way that it's been laid out all year is we get a set of notes every couple weeks, and then we have a test 2 weeks after that. And I personally, I'm not gonna lie, I don't retain any of the information. It's an anatomy class, so it's really heavy information, and I definitely feel like I should be retaining that information when I want to, but it's just so difficult for me to do that. Just writing things down, and then um, she has us do an open note, so I don't have to memorize anything. I don't know, and that's what I'm also worried about, just because I do plan on going into the medical field, so it's really important to me that I know a lot and that I learn a lot in college. And I really hope that that just does not cross over into my college classes next year.
I think also our senior year has been kind of a cheat year. We're getting away with a lot of things that we shouldn't get away with. And I'm just worried that I'm going to take these COVID habits with me to college and it's just going to screw everything up because not every test will be open notes like it is now. We won't get as much leniency as because teachers feel bad for the seniors who have missed a bunch. So they're like, oh, it's okay. But I know in college that won't happen. And I hope I can break those habits before I get to college.
Um, we always, during this time, all of us have missed something that we used to do. What's something that you missed that you didn't expect to miss?
I miss seeing smiles. Like I miss walking through the hallways and seeing people like smile at me or being able to physically see somebody laugh. I miss that a lot because that was something I enjoyed. And now I smile at people and it just looks like I'm staring at them awkwardly because that's just who I am. I walk through the hallways and I'll smile at people, and a lot of times I'll wait for them to smile at me back. So I'll just be staring at somebody for like 5, 10 seconds awkwardly.
And they have masks on.
I think Emma can agree with me on this one. I miss our packed band room. I always used to complain because it's always like last year it was just so dense and there was no room to walk in there because we have so many band students. But I miss that so much now because we're in the auditorium and everyone's spaced out and the sound is so different. And I just think it's for me as a senior, this being my last year playing, it was really important for me to get, to kind of get my last normal year of band. So, being spread out in the auditorium, it's better than nothing. Like at least we get to play, but I really miss being with everyone in the same space.
I think something that I miss, it's not necessarily something that I didn't think I would, but I took it for granted. I miss not having to like worry about things. Like I remember a couple months ago, I just got like a bad, seasonal allergies, and I got really scared that I was going to get my family sick because I thought that I could possibly have corona, but I didn't. But I miss not having to worry about like getting my whole family sick, because if I did, it would just be some passing cold. Or the same with my grandparents. Like, I knew that I would miss them, but you don't really realize how much like contact means to you. Like, I have some of my grandparents I haven't seen in over a year because they live farther away, and so we haven't been able to go out and see them. And like, to an extent, I've always been worried about my grandparents' health because they've been older, but now I'm very worried because I want them to go and get their groceries, but I don't want them to, risk picking something up on their way home, and I don't want to have to worry about that kind of thing as much anymore.
Going off of what Emma said, I definitely feel that because um, I didn't think that my grandpa would get cancer in the middle of a pandemic. And because of that, I miss getting to see him as much as I used to. Now it's just kind of we go as we can. Um, and, we don't know how much time we have left with him. So it's like every visit I miss because I was at school where I could have been exposed, or at work where I could have been exposed, or every visit I miss that could have been like, there's always that thought in the back of my mind that that could have been my last moment to see him or my last chance. And that's just, it's really hard because you don't know anything. You don't know if you were exposed. You don't know if it is your last chance to see a friend or a family member. It's just everything is so like, I miss knowing when and what, like how something would happen, because everything is just so new and we don't know how everything works.
Yeah, very similar to what Christina said with things that like I miss. I didn't think that, well, like when you plan for certain events, you always expect them to happen, and like, some things can get rained out, but there are some things that you can always, you know, that's just going to happen no matter what. But my grandmother passed away in March last year. So like right when everything started to explode and everything, and so she passed away, and we were kind of, thinking, oh, we can have her services and everything, and it's been 11 months and we still haven't been able to do anything because we can't safely get together, and a lot of churches and things won't let funerals happen, especially since she wanted to be cremated. And so since she was cremated, she doesn't have the sort of demand that people who are going to be buried need to have. And so it's been almost a year and we haven't been able to have a proper funeral, which is like so ridiculous seeming and out of the ordinary of anything that's ever happened. And I didn't think that that would ever have to happen, because it just seems like somebody passes away and you have a funeral and that's that. But even those kinds of things have been thrown off.
I also miss a lot of like the little things, just even like driving with my friends or having like movie nights or sleepovers or just talking with my friends in the hallways. Now it's a lot of I don't want to spend too much time in the hallways or too much time in one place because I'm trying not to get anything that will cause future problems. So, and I still do like get to interact with my friends or go out and hang out with them, but it's not the same because now we're wearing masks and now we're super cautious. Now we don't go to stores like we used to or go watch movies. So it's just missing the little memories. Because I look through my phone and junior year, I had so many memories with my friends, like the first part of junior year. And I had so many of these pictures. And now it's just my phone is just full of just pictures of me by myself and my cats and stuff. And because I can't hang out with my friends. And it's just I miss that a lot.
Something I miss a lot as well is having support systems with me at like school events and things. Like we had a in-person band concert a while ago, and I completely agree with the two-person rule at school. I think that's very smart and an excellent way to keep the numbers down in small spaces. It's just something I definitely took for granted was having, you know, my both my parents and both sets of my grandparents there. And something that I'm really worried about is for graduation. If we do end up getting to have a graduation, like I've always pictured like my whole family there. Like my best friend graduated last year, and I was really hoping that she'd be able to come watch me. And that's, you know, I really just want all my people at my graduation. And I mean, because I only get one. But I completely understand if that's not the case, but that's just something that I was really looking forward to and I hope can happen.
Yeah, you've talked about relationships, and I want to explore that just a little further. How have how has establishing relationships and maintaining relationships changed during COVID?
Well, I can say that. So I'm a senior this year, and most of my friends that I was like really close with, hung out all the time, graduated last year. So even last year, I would always talk about, okay, Rory, you have to make friends this year. You have to make friends this year because otherwise you're never going to go anywhere. And that's been the case this whole year. I've had a lot of trouble, you know, making new connections just because I don't have the opportunity to. And so that's been, I mean, I'm okay with it, but that's just something that I've kind of struggled with. And so I've always talked about, well, next year it's really important to me that I take the time to make new connections because it's been kind of a struggle this year for me to do that.
I'm kind of the opposite way. I didn't have I mean a lot of the friends that I was friends with in person last year and the year before that, we kind of drifted away because a lot of friendships are based on hanging out all the time and having those moments together. But we didn't have that anymore. All we had was FaceTime and we couldn't have like memories where we would like how I talked before, like movie nights and stuff. So I wasn't friends with those people anymore. But I made a lot of friends just like that go to my school but online just because I would post something about being in being in quarantine and not having any friends and they would be like, "Hey, same." And then we would talk more about it and I grew a lot more closer with people that I never thought I would be friends with just because we talked online. And then when we went back to school, we built those connections more in person, but it is more online than anything.
Yeah, I think that it has been very hard to establish relationships or make new relationships this year because for a lot of relationships, the in-person connection is kind of cut off. I mean, you can become friends with someone at school, but without being able to really spend time together, it's really hard to. But I was very lucky that I have a very good support system through both my family and my group of friends. But I remember with like maintaining relationships back in the first sort of quarantine kind of thing. Um, I remember that sometimes I'd just be stuck at home and I'd get sick of my family, and it would just kind of become this like kind of strange thing for a couple of days. But of course, it's family, so it'll come back together after a couple of days. But the same thing with friends, like I mean, well, the friends was kind of the opposite because I'd be spending so much time with my family, but so little time with my friends. But in both cases, I was lucky enough that these things would kind of drift back together eventually.
With like how Emma was saying about family, I definitely fought with my parents a lot more because I was home and they were home, and it was just we didn't have anywhere to escape when we got heated. Like I couldn't go out and vent to my friends. Like it was just all in one place, and also it was really hard for me to understand because of things that were going on why I at the very beginning why I couldn't go hang out with my friends, why it affected me if it only affected older and way younger people, why, because I didn't really get the concept that I could give it to somebody else until news articles came out about it and it was more public. And then also my siblings are both in college, so they were out of the house when COVID started, and I didn't get to see them for a really long time. And that was, and even my step siblings, I didn't get to see them for 3 months, and that was really hard because I'm used to seeing them all the time, and they're like my best friends. So not seeing my siblings and not having anybody else in the house besides me and my parents, like not even any other source of someone to communicate with, was just that was the hardest part for me.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Like many other people, I was in a very strict quarantine for about 3 months at the beginning of the pandemic. Like, I did not see my friends one single time. Like, they weren't allowed to come over to my house and like social distance on the driveway. Like, could not do any of that. So it was just my family pretty much locked in my house. And I don't want to say that it strained our relationship as a family, but it definitely was a little frustrating. I was definitely grateful that I had my family and that we were all healthy and everything. But not being able to have my space, which is very important to me, was a little difficult. And I definitely found myself, staying in my room and doing my own thing for the majority of the time.
Mhm. There's always a lot of talk about normal, let's get back to normal, or this is the new normal. What do you, well, let me preface it with this question. What are some of the silver linings? What are some of the good things that have happened that wouldn't have happened because of the pandemic?
I think we slowed down a lot. I think we were going, like as a society, we're going really, really fast, and we weren't thinking about what we did and how it affected other people. And then when the pandemic hit and all of that, it was like, oh, so if I don't wash my hands, I'll affect somebody else. Oh, if I like cough next to somebody, then I'm affecting them. And we just had that time to slow down and really process things and think about things. And I don't think we would have done that if we didn't have a pandemic.
Yeah, this is going to sound a little cliche, but we definitely came together as a community, I feel like. And you saw people supporting people that normally wouldn't support each other. Like, my favorite things to see were the drive-by birthday parties. And that was just the coolest thing. It was such a unique way to celebrate someone's birthday during quarantine. And seeing people that, like, I went on a lot that of people I didn't even know. Like, my sister's birthday was in April, and so we set out signs for her, and people would drive past and just honk all day, and it was so fun that it was kind of like a all day celebration of just people coming together, and I really like that.
It may sound a little silly, but no one in my house has gotten sick from the flu this quarantine, which has been great because we almost always get extremely sick. Like one person's throwing up in the bathroom, another person's dead in their room, and the other two are just like, "What is going on?" And then it passes on to them, and it's like a month thing. But no one has gotten sick because masks, and it's a culture thing in other countries around this time period where they wear masks and they have a much lower flu rate. And we're seeing this in the US now. So it's sort of like what if we adopt this mask thing for a little while longer, even after quarantine, just to get rid of the flu season? And it's been really nice not being sick.
Yeah,
Piggybacking off of the masks, it keeps my face warm in the winter. Very nice to wear those outside.
yeah, I think that this has kind of shown us how unsanitary a lot of the things that we do are like not as much here in, DeWitt, but out in New York on the subway and stuff like that, you realize how you sneezing if you have a cold or something can impact another person. Like we have seen how it shouldn't be necessarily a common thing that every winter you get the flu, because you can prevent that if you wash your hands and even wear a mask out in public. And then one really interesting and I think positive thing that has come out of this in such an obviously negative time was that in these months where nobody was really going anywhere or doing anything, there were really low pollution rates because no one was driving around, no one was using gas, and a lot of rivers and stuff were cleared up because nobody was using them. And so I think that in obviously a very negative time, it was important to look at these kind of silver lining things.
I think another thing is I had more free time. I'm normally a person who sets myself up with so many things that I just get stressed out. But I had more time to focus on myself and things that I was passionate about. And I found out a lot of things that I was passionate about. And I don't think it changed also like my career idea and the field I wanted to go into because I realized more about what I wanted to do versus what society was telling me to do.
Yeah, the rest of you riffing off Christina's thing about what she found out about herself. Anybody else have something else to contribute as far as what did you learn about yourself? What have you learned about yourself?
I mean, I discovered a whole new genre of books that I liked, and then just found out that I personally like enjoying, because my mom leaves really early, and then I usually before quarantine would just see her when I got home from school and then at dinner, and that would be it. But because of quarantine she's been home a lot, so I found out that I really enjoy just like seeing my mom in the morning, and like her driving me out to the bus stop now that it's gotten really freaking cold, or just like giving me a hug, and then sometimes picking me up from school because like she just has time to do that, or I have after school activities. It's been really nice. Just the Yes, it's been really stressing to be with your family, and like me and my dad, we butt heads a lot because we're both really stubborn. But it's also been really nice because even though we've been in close confinements together and like we do get angry at each other, it's also deepened the familial relationships.
Yeah, I think obviously family has become a really big thing. I've realized how much I've taken seeing my family like for granted because I'm very lucky I get to see, most of my family at least once a week, not necessarily my grandparents, but I usually am able to call them once a week. But I think I'm a little bit opposite of Christina because I mean, I've always been somebody that has like filled my schedule. And back when everything basically got cleared off of that, I realized how much I need a schedule to really feel like okay. Because in these months when I was doing absolutely nothing, I just felt like terrible. I had nothing to fill my day. And I mean, I read like dozens of books, but I still just was so bored and then I couldn't sleep. And so it's made me realize how much I just need to be busy in order to like feel satisfied with, how I'm doing and stuff.
Yeah, I'm definitely also a very busy person. And I feel much more fulfilled when I'm busy and I'm accomplishing things. So, um, I not before the pandemic, I've kind of had trouble finding like hobbies that suited me. But I found a lot of productive hobbies during quarantine. I took up cross stitching, which was really fun, and I've gotten really good at that, and I keep doing that, and things like that. And I think it's much better than just watching Netflix because when I had downtime, I would just like do absolutely nothing productive. And now when I have free time, I have things that I actually enjoy doing, and I feel like I actually get something out of it.
I found out that I love walking and hiking. Before before quarantine, I was so like do homework and then watch Netflix and then read. Like I didn't leave my this sounds really weird, but I didn't really leave my house or school or my activities. But then when I was quarantined and I was so sick of being in the house, I got out and I would walk 8 miles while just listening to music and being by myself. And I would just walk around town and look at all the hearts on the windows and look at all the different messages that people were leaving. And then that just kind of became like my safe place because I couldn't really walk with friends. And if I did, they had to be across the street or I'd have to wear a mask when I walk with them. But I realized that walking is one of my favorite things to do now.
Thank you for sharing the information. I'm sorry that I came in late, you guys. I'm Dr. Sarah Rissler with St. Ambrose University. I'm interested in this conversation for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is I'm in education. So I'm interested in knowing, what support persons did you ladies have in your life?
I emailed my teachers a lot during quarantine, and even now, I'm really close with the librarians at our school, just because I checked in with them a lot. And there's there are certain teachers at the school who sat down with me even on Zoom calls during quarantine, and now when I'm not at school, who talk me through mental health things and things with my grandpa and stuff, because you do need a lot of people in your life to help you through things that aren't your family and who aren't like immediately connected to you. And then having those teachers who have seen the way that you grow and the way that you learn help you through things is like, that's really helpful. So sitting down with through Zoom calls with them and just talking about things that I hadn't been able to talk about for weeks was one of my biggest support systems.
Thank you, Christina. I'm going to ask you just one quick follow-up, if you don't mind, particularly because you were talking about finding space to go for walks because you were tired of being in your house. Okay, so these Zoom calls you're talking about with very sensitive topics with these people in the school and in the library that you feel comfortable talking to. What was the space that you were in physically when you were having these conversations with these trusted adults?
Do you mean like physical space?
Yeah, like were you in your bedroom sitting on your bed? Were you at the kitchen table with mom like in the background? Like tell me a little bit about the space that you were in when you were having these conversations.
A lot of times I would disappear into my room and talk to the teachers, which was a nice thing because when you are at school and you're trying to talk to a teacher about a personal thing, there's always those students who drift by in the hallways and who are trying to listen without listening. And but when you are on Zoom and when the teacher like actually cares and makes an effort to like walk away from their family to talk to you about serious things, and you feel listened to, and it was nice to feel heard during quarantine because I was able to talk to them about things that were happening with my family, and even just little things like my teachers would talk to me about how their kids were stressing them out, and I would talk to them about how
I can 100% relate with that, Christina. Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, well, this might be a good time to segue into our adults. Thank you, Dr. Rissler, for joining us and presenting those questions. That was very helpful, I think. You spoke of mental health, and Christina, you did too, a little bit. And mental health is one of the things that fascinates me. Do you want to make any comments about how your mental health has been affected and how you've handled that?
So I actually was recently diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, which I had kind of struggled with before quarantine, but it was definitely accentuated, and it got to the point where I was getting sick a lot. So that's kind of what made me, kind of fix that. But I feel like being at school in this time period and kind of going through the motions has just made it a really stressful time. And so that definitely has not been very good, but I've been handling it very well, I think.
Good.
Yeah, like Rory, I've had some kind of stuff like that. Like I got diagnosed with some anxiety and depression when I was in intermediate school. So I've had this kind of thing for a while. And it's always kind of appeared when I've had nothing to do. Like
Mm.
I think a lot of my coping is throwing myself into stuff. So I've always done a lot of activities and I've always been very involved in school things. And so when I had none of that to do, it was just kind of not a great place to be in, because when you're trapped in your room for so long, there's only so much that you can do. And I would just find myself being like super nervous all day because I'd be like, I don't know what to do. I have nothing to do. I'm not being productive. And so, one way that I kind of dealt with that is I got 2 jobs over the summer. And one of those I really enjoyed. And then the other one was the one that I've had at the hospital, which has been a very interesting job working at a nursing home because um, it's already a very stressful environment to be in, because you're seeing some people in very sad parts of their life, and then when their life eventually ends, it can be very hard. And I think this time has only exaggerated that because it has kind of ended a lot of people's lives there. And so I think that, well, that was a very hard time, but I think that with school starting up again, I was very thankful that we were able to do it, because it again gave me this coping mechanism for me to, because I really like school, but I can, focus on these things that I enjoy doing because I'm good at them. And so I feel productive and I feel like I'm actually doing something instead of doing nothing.
I'm the same way. I also have depression and anxiety. So um, I struggled a lot when my grandpa first got diagnosed and I couldn't leave my house. So I struggled um, with the just being really anxious about if I hung up on if I hung up on the phone with him without saying goodbye, that that would be the last moment I had, and I had a lot of anxiety and panic attacks about that. If even with my parents, if they went to when they started going back to work, if they left and they didn't say goodbye in the morning, then I it was a really rough day for me because who knows what's going to happen. Like a lot of people have died during the pandemic, and so a lot of people who look strong and healthy, and then all of a sudden they were just gone, and so anybody, it could happen to anybody. So it's just really scary, and that caused a lot of bad mental health stuff for me. But I also throughout quarantine I learned how to deal with it because I didn't have my normal coping mechanisms. I didn't have things for me to throw myself into or ways to avoid it. So I had to face it head on and I had to deal with it myself.
I also had the problem with a lot of my coping mechanisms be at school. Like for example, I always kind of have stuff that I'm working on for music. Like I auditioned for Allstate and Solo Fest and everything, so I kind of always have stuff to be working on. But I play percussion, so a lot of my instruments are at school. So whenever I would be really, really stressed out about school, I would go to the school and, work on whatever I was working on. And that would kind of be a good way for me to just kind of stop thinking about things and focus on something that I'm good at. And I didn't have the opportunity to do that. So that was, my main coping mechanism that I wasn't able to do. And that was a little difficult for me.
Grace?
I mean, I was also a person who I love doing choir stuff. So I was always the person who would be the first to try out for solos or go to Allstate for that. And I noticed I've never been a person who gets nervous at solos. And then I noticed when I went to the Allstate solo, my legs started shaking and I completely bombed 4 out of the 5 songs and only really got there at the last song for like our pre-auditions because everything was recorded. And that's never really been a thing. So I've noticed that COVID has really impacted my confidence and my ability to do things well.
Mm. Okay. Well, thank you. I think our adults have listened patiently because they care about this and they want to know. So I'm going to invite each adult to ask you one question if they would like to. We'll start with Sharon. Do you have a question you would like to ask the group?
I guess I would say I find it interesting that I would gather from the majority of you, you're sounding like you prefer to be in school versus online. And it sounds like you've worked through things quite well. If some of you are younger and some of you are moving on to college, do you think that this has prepared you better or worse, you two gals that are going on to college next year?
Definitely worse, I think. I mean, I don't want to, be a Debbie Downer, but I think that I am going in with a lot more reservations than I would be. Just because, this is supposed to be the year where I was supposed to take all my dual credit classes that were being taught by college professors, where I could kind of get kind of a taste of what it was supposed to, what college would feel like. But I didn't really have that. So I feel like I'm kind of going into college a little bit more blind than I would like to.
Okay, thank you.
No, I totally agree with Rory. That was, like I said earlier, it just feels like there's so many cheats that we have this year that we won't have in college. So I just feel really unprepared. Like I feel like I felt more prepared junior year than I do feel now.
I wish you both luck.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Sister Margaret, do you have a question for our students?
I was interested in you talking about your online email classes. Did the school not have Zoom classes where you could be together with a variety of students where you could learn together? Is that not a choice that you would have as part of your online experiences?
It is now, but last semester Zoom was still really new, and a lot of it just wasn't really something that we were experiencing with. But now, if you're online, you're on Zoom with us in the classroom. But last semester and during quarantine, there wasn't anything. Like if you were online, you were completely alone besides emailing your teachers.
I would like to say though that for being completely new to a pandemic, obviously, I feel like they did handle it fairly well and, at least giving us some type of learning and doing the best they could because, the teachers did an awesome job at, adapting and figuring out what was going to be best for us. And they took a lot of feedback and I definitely really appreciated that. And this semester definitely has improved, I think. So they have been learning from what's been going good and what's been going wrong, so that's good.
I agree. I don't think it's any of the teachers' faults that Ingenuity was horrible in the way that it was. But the one thing that really frustrates me and my family is that what they have set up for the quarantine kids who go in once someone in their family has been tested at positive at North Scott, you quarantine for 2 weeks and then you go back. But for all those kids, even throughout the last semester, you would get sent assignments through your teachers on Canvas and you would just go to a Google Meet for every teacher. And that worked perfectly for all those kids for those 2 weeks. So what I don't understand is why the administration didn't allow all the online kids to just do that. I mean, like, I get that it could have been a hassle, but from what I have seen from the kids who were online, it was fine, or who were in quarantine, my bad, who were in quarantine, it was completely fine for them through the Google Meets, and they learned at a much better pace than us online kids. So it sort of frustrates me the way that, because North Scott, it was all or nothing, and there was no in between. So, I mean, that sort of frustrates me. But the teachers who I've met coming back to school have all been great in helping me close the gap between what I am at and what school is at.
Okay, thank you. Sister Johanna, would you like to ask a question?
Well, I've been kind of racing through my brain trying to think of what kind of a question. I think all of you people have really given some wonderful insights, and finally came up with one sort of an idea. I know that, for example, many times as part of your experience, both of, high school, but especially I think preparing for college, you have service projects, I think, or at least I thought they did, things like that. So I was kind of wondering how you have been able to maybe do your outreach to other people or to have an experience of service maybe for people beyond your family, or has that been pretty much just kind of on hold for now, or what do you think about that?
I actually had a really interesting experience recently. So I worked with the referral center over Christmas, and they do a Christmas angel tree project, and usually it's in person. So people go into banks and take a name off a tree or something, and then they donate gifts to this child or this family. And I actually helped to develop a virtual way of this. So it was through email, and I and someone else helped coordinate it. And so it ended up going really smoothly. And I think that that was such a meaningful thing for me to do, especially during a pandemic. And I was really proud of myself for being able to complete that and to develop that. And we actually decided that we're going to continue doing that for future years, even if the pandemic stops. So that was something that I think I did pretty well.
For my church, a big thing was small groups. They couldn't get together as much as they wanted to because a lot of daycares were closed, and so they didn't really have people to help with watch kids either, because people were so on guard about working with kids and volunteering. So my mom and I actually went and volunteered for the church nursery. I mean, we wore masks and we were really safe about it, but learning from like these preschoolers what they were going through with COVID, like how good they were with their masks, and just what they were learning, that was life changing for me too, because I can't imagine going into kindergarten and everything being completely different than it was like what you've grown up playing with, and how life changing that would have been for them.
Okay. Mrs. Mercado, do you have a comment or a question?
I do have a question. What wisdom have you gained from your experience that you can imagine passing on to future generations? All of us have things that we've experienced, and we look back and, oh, okay, this is what my generation went through, and this is what I can pass on to you. Looking back at the hardships that you guys have overcome, I would say I'm really impressed hearing your stories today. And I imagine, you as parents and grandparents looking back, what kinds of things might you pass on to your children and grandchildren?
Something that I think I've seen is that I've gotten a lot better at looking at what I have and not just being thankful for it, but being able to make the most out of what I have. Like, there would be moments where I would just be, angry that I couldn't leave the house or go see my friends, but I had to look back and see, I have my family, we have, a safe place that we can be and keep ourselves healthy. And that is something that a lot of people don't have. But, while I would like to be doing these other things, I am very lucky to have what I have. And even in some harder times like these, you can still have, these good memories. And while things might not go the way that you want them to, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a bad thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I've definitely become more grateful for the little things, I think. I was grateful that I got one marching band performance because it's better than none. I'm grateful that I get to go to school every day because some people don't. So yeah.
I think another thing, this is really cliche and kind of cringy, but another thing is say I love you. Don't, like, when you are visiting a family member, or even just like a close friend that you've been friends with for a really long time, when you say goodbye, like make sure you tell them how much they mean to you, because you never know if you're going to see them again. And that's just like what I've learned, like with my grandpa. We didn't before we found out he was sick and before the pandemic and everything, it was just kind of like, bye, see you later. But now we treat every moment like it'll be the last time we see each other. And I do that with my friends and my family, just because I've gotten in the habit of doing that. And I think it's made each memory and each connection so much stronger too.
Okay, Jennifer, a question for the group?
Well, first of all, I'm so impressed with these young ladies. If this is any indication of what our future holds, it's very promising. So I wish you all luck in your future years in school and on to college. Some of this has been addressed, but I'll give you two choices. Either what is your biggest regret during the pandemic, or what did you find was your biggest blessing during the pandemic?
I think my biggest regret during the pandemic um, is not listening to my parents when they said stay home and do stuff with us, because I would go on walks and I would, like, I didn't regret going on the walks, but I regretted not getting that time with them. Even like just because, again, like now I don't know when my last moment will be with anybody. So I regret skipping out so I could get some time away from them. Again, I also regret not doing a lot of my schoolwork because I thought I could push it off.
I think something that I regret, and Christina's talked about kind of her feelings about this, but was, yeah, taking what I had like with my grandparents for granted. Like when I lost my grandmother in March, that was not necessarily a surprise, but it was still something that I kind of was pretending wouldn't happen. And then with my mom's parents, they live out east, and I haven't been able to see them for over a year. And we've always kind of had it where we see them once a year and that's about it. But my grandfather has had some really bad health lately, and he did get COVID and thankfully was okay. But it kind of made me realize that maybe once a year isn't enough. And I think that my whole family kind of realized that because we saw how quickly things could change and, you know, what we could lose if we didn't actually take our time together as well as we wanted. And yeah, so I think that family is something that I have regretted not realizing how important it is, because I've always been lucky enough to have a very caring family and a family that I can see if I really need to. And that's something that I now really haven't been able to do.
Okay, well, the timing is perfect on this. Thank you, everybody, for making that work. For all you students, what advice do you have for those of us who are older?
I think listening to students would be really cool, because um, I I don't know. I just feel like if we were more heard through like staff and administration, or even just from parents in general, um, this is how we're learning, and this is how we're adapting and we're growing. And I think our opinion is really important, because we know, like in a long sense, we know what's best for us. We know how we learn. We know how we adapt. And I think our community does a really good job of listening, but there's still some people out there who are really headstrong and think that kids don't know anything. But we're adapting everything, and we do know a lot of stuff, and we do know what's best for us. So
I think that a lot of adults could take this as like an opportunity to learn how to adapt, because since we're so young, we haven't had this like certain mindset set in place. So most of us have been able to change to accommodate this change. And I know a lot of adults that are very weary to wear a mask or just distance or anything, because that's not what people have had to do before. And so I think it's important that just because something is different and something that you don't want to do, you need to be able to see that and see what its advantages are, and how, especially in a time like this, how important it really is.
Adding on to that, I'd say it's important for not just the older generation, but every generation to be open to all information and to be like open to learning about new things. And we've sort of seen that during the pandemic, either through because information changed all the time with it. So to be able to keep up with the different guidelines and all that takes different sources and different information. So I would just advise you to keep different sources and always have different information open to make sure that you always get the correct information.
Okay. Well, this concludes our evening together, and thank you everyone for making this happen. I think we've heard some very important information. I think you've all opened our minds, and I hope that you students have realized that we are here to listen to you, and I hope that other adults are too, and that they realize how important listening is. So thank you for sharing your stories, and best wishes.
Thank you for this opportunity. I just want to say it was really nice to be able to talk about it, because this is the longest that I've been able to sit down and really discuss like what's going on.
Good, good. That was our purpose, was
And
be able
thank
to-
you for being willing to share it, because that
Thank you
could
for
be a very
listening.
scary thing as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for letting us talk about our experiences, because I think a lot of the time they can get overlooked, and it was very interesting to hear everyone's stories.
Yeah, yeah. So stay in touch.
Thank you, students.
Yes, and I too would like to add thanks for your openness and your willingness to share. It's been very wonderful experience, and so thanks to all of you.
Thank you for listening.
You're welcome. Okay, well, I'm going to